I'd like to start with a huge trigger list for what will be discussed. This story includes the discussion and romanticization of pedophilia, incest, rape, sexual content, fictional gore, fat phobia, possible sexism, and racism. I would also like to mention that NC's minor sister had come out about how NC was sexually inappropriate to her while NC was an adult. I do not know how old her little sister is now, but she was a minor during these screenshots, and I do not want to speak about her. She's allowed to speak about her abusive sister on her own terms. Please do not go looking for the little sister. If you do find NC on any platform, especially on Scratch, I do encourage you not to interact and to simply report her and her inappropriate projects. I was reminded of this whole event because I remembered that there was someone else who had very problematic DeviantArt posts that me and a bunch of other people had emailed Scratch team about. And C was allowed to stay on Scratch because, according to Johnny, her pedophilic and ancestral relationship drawings were off Scratch, and therefore, they couldn't ban her for things she did on DeviantArt. Sound familiar? While my problematic DeviantArt post that got my account deleted was about not wanting people to use my OC as a profile picture, and C drawing adult and minor siblings being sexual with each other was not enough to get her Scratch account even banned. Johnny throws in that they were not 100% sure that this DeviantArt account was in fact NC, but as you could see later, Scratchers did find her account and mentioned her. And she did not deny that she was NC on Scratch. Similarly, the art styles are the same, and on her DeviantArt, she posts the full image of the profile picture she uses on Scratch. There is definite proof that she owns both accounts. I wanted to go through the images I sent to Scratch team that was proof of NC being a pedophile and doing very awful things that ideally would get her banned on a site with the majority of its audience being very young children. And yes, some of these screenshots are from Scratch, so she did post sexual content on Scratch as well. Firstly, I want to give the proof of her alt being hers. She had another account called Taiji333 where a really bad project was posted. She says in her bio that she moved to her current NC account. I'll start with what she posted on this account. The really bad project I mentioned was a very sexual animation between one anthro character and another who is occasionally feral. There was a scene of the dog-like character on a leash which could be seen as some sort of kink gear, grinding on the sensitive parts of another character. I don't have any animations saved since these were all screenshots I had attached for Scratch team to review. This specific project had 1,000 possible children exposed to this, and in the screenshot you could see that there is even a remix of a cat and a human being sexual with each other. There are 10 remixes, and you know how Scratch team is with remixes. Usually if one project is taken down for breaking the guidelines, all the remixes will stay up. This means that it is possible that there are 10 exact copies or versions of this sexual animation up on a site full of kids, at least 8. Here's an animation in the same project of the character who is wearing a leash twerking. Considering this is an anthro character, the dog leash and collar was definitely kink gear. There was butt slapping as well. I know that people slap each other's butts platonically, but in the context of this animation being a bunch of grinding and twerking under a song about having sex, it was very clear that this slap was not platonic. In the comments of this project, NC claims that the project is safe for work since the sexual context will fly over young kids' heads. This is a horrible excuse. Sexual content is still sexual content, and it should not be shared on an educational site to a bunch of third graders. It doesn't matter if they don't understand what grinding is. Also below that, someone mentions remixing with winky faces, so do as you will, but I'm guessing this kid understands that this was a sexual animation. This point is a bit gray since I don't believe height differences should determine the age of someone. I am very short for an adult, so I'm aware that we can come in all different heights. I just find this weird due to NC's history of drawing adult dating minor relationships. The ages are not mentioned anywhere, but I wanted to point out that she draws a lot of relationships with one character who seems to be a child and one character that seems to be an adult. I also think this point is pretty weak, but I had mentioned to Scratch team that NC draws what looks to be children with the heavy blush she uses for her not safe for work drawings. I'm not saying that children can't be in relationships, but when you see an adult who seems to be drawing children in a romantic light all the time, it starts to get really suspicious. especially once we find out that she does in fact romantically like a child as an adult. This one isn't sexual luckily, but NC was drawing excessive amounts of gore on this account. This was the last image I had for this account, and luckily, the twerking and grinding project was taken down. I wanted to go through this account because after Scratch Team saw that she posted a very sexual animation like the Boom 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 project, you would think that they would ban her, right? If someone's okay with posting sexual content for kids, you would think that the site would ban them to stop her from exposing more kids to sexual content, right? Well, no. She's still unbanned on her main account to this day. In fact, her main account features an animation of what looked to be a child to me flashing her panties. I saw comments that mention that the character is actually her and is an adult, but that doesn't make animating flashing and showing it to kids okay at all. Me and a bunch of people reported this project multiple times, and every time someone called her out in the comments or asked her to at least give her character shorts over her underwear, she would delete the comment. This project was never taken down, and is still up and featured to this day. You know how the tilde is usually used by not safe for work role players to give off a sexual tone? NC uses this as almost all her sentences, and even when someone pointed out that her messages were coming off as flirty, she never stopped using it. She states that it isn't her problem that children are uncomfortable with an adult sending what looks to be flirty messages towards them. She puts the responsibility on the kids to not interact with her instead of her not trying to sound flirty and sexual on a kid's site. Now to DeviantArt. I already proved that NC posted a full image of her Scratch profile picture on DeviantArt, so this is confirmed to be her account, but here is her profile where Scratchers had found her. The above comment comes after her little sister came out about how NC sexually abused her, and NC does not pretend that this DeviantArt account is not her. So that is more proof to Johnny that this account belongs to her 100%. Since DeviantArt has little filter in what can be posted, NC can go all out on her weird romanticization of things like pedophilia and rape. This piece introduced a character with a caption that seemed really goofy for something so serious. I feel like going ahem or worded and making her have other characters call her crybaby is super weird. There are also many misspellings, grammar errors, and capitalization errors that just makes this description read as satire. When I emailed this image to Scratch Team, I thought that the older brother was blushing for sexual reasons, but now that I'm older, I realize that he's probably blushing from embarrassment. I do feel weirded out that NC decided to draw a child being fascinated with a lingerie store. This piece also establishes that the younger sister is a child. This one is weird when you look at the previous image. The child is young enough to not even say Victoria's Secret correctly. It's really weird to then very sexualize this young child by drawing her extremely curvy. I'm not saying that minors can't have breasts. As a female, we start developing a chest around 10 years old, but they are definitely not full-grown like this, and the way the kid speaks gives off more of a 6 to 7-year-old first grader. I'm sure that the way the kid speaks was intentional because the older brother says secret, and it is spelled correctly, so it's not like NC can't spell. And here's the very young child character singing a sexual song. I had these labeled as incest because I thought the blushing was of arousal by the big brother, but now that I'm older, I think he's just embarrassed to be around his young sister being sexual. I still do think that NC, an adult, drawing a child doing sexual things several times is really weird. Moving on to Discord, I was sent messages that minors in my server had experienced or seen coming from NC. I'll be censoring their names for privacy, since they're not important. So, NC's Discord display name is NaviMumu. I don't know her actual username though. The friend NC is talking to here is 11 to 15, and she uses the flirty tilde a lot in these messages. It's especially weird when she's talking about missing 11 to 15-year-olds so much, and ends it with flirty punctuation. She's jealous of someone named Oreo, who is also around 11 to 15 because they were taking the friend's attention away from the adult. This is an actual example of grooming. NC is trying to guilt-trip this child in order to isolate her from an actual healthy friendship, that being Oreo. NC mentions that this friend is literally only leaving NC for an hour, and this makes her sad. NC is trying to make this kid dependent on her and having her as her only friend. Not to mention that again, she's using flirty undertones with the tilde and even draws her and the kid's OC holding hands with a heart. It's okay for an adult and a child to hold hands, if they are related or a family friend or something. This is not okay to be drawing an adult holding hands with a random child with hearts on the image to signify love. And now for the art she drew about her and her sister. Yeah. NC, when she was 20, was drawing herself licking her 13-year-old sister with captions telling the little girl to want her and to have sexual feelings for her, and to have sex with her, and to be obsessed with her. If this isn't clear proof that NC is a pedophile and someone who wants an incestuous relationship with her minor sister, I don't know what would convince you. Something a little more lighthearted but still horrendous. NC is here talking about that friend who is friends with Oreo. This whole paragraph is a roller coaster. First, she mentions that this 11 to 15-year-old child's female OC looked too much like a dude because he wasn't feminine enough. Gets upset about the child not drawing ideally skinny characters and mentioning fatness in a bad light a whole bunch. And she even decides to be racist by being mad that this child only draws black characters with, in her words, ogre noses. This is a stereotype of African Americans, so saying that all her black characters have ogre noses is a form of racism. It would be like if NC told me that all my Asian OCs have lines for eyes. I don't know NC's race, so I can't say if this was friendly fire, but it's still really gross to be saying these things about a possible 11-year-old's characters. Now this is all hearsay, so you don't have to believe me or these people, but allegedly, NC draws child porn and comments pedophilic things about other child characters and real children. All these people here reported her on Scratch for the things she did share to kids, and we all emailed Scratch team about how much we didn't think a pedophile should be allowed to have a Scratch account. Clearly, they did not listen since she is still around. Now, luckily, I did go back to that one animation of her flashing her underwear when I was away from IP and could access Scratch. And she finally put shorts on the girl after 2 years of deleting all the comments telling her that animating someone flashing isn't appropriate for Scratch. But the thing is, she only puts pants on. The final animation. The sketch phases of the animation still has her character flashing her panties. The sketch is clean enough to know what you're looking at, so it's very obvious what the original animation was. Anyway, I'm really concerned about how NC is still allowed on Scratch. She's a confirmed pedophile who's in love with her minor sister and allegedly draws child porn. She makes and shares sexual animations on a website full of kids. And Scratchers were able to find her DeviantArt, which features a lot of not safe for work content and adult dating minor and sibling-to-sibling romantic relationships. I don't understand why Scratch team decided that my account deserved to be deleted because of DeviantArt posts about the design process of Pigeon, while Scratch team also decided that yes, NC is a pedophile and is sexually attracted to her little sister, but she shares most of her sexual content on DeviantArt, so she doesn't get banned due to most of it being off Scratch. I don't care too much about how clear the discrimination is against me. I'm more concerned that they are too busy being concerned about what I do to ban a pedophile on Scratch who shares sexual animations to kids. Why isn't NC banned? Why was I deleted? This comparison of our DeviantArt accounts being the deciding factor in what bans us is sickening. How am I worse than a pedophile who sexually harassed her minor sister?